Hey guys, Ben Painter, and today we're back once again for another video, and this time we are down at Teamsport Reading for the BIKC regional final in the heavyweight category. Now the format for this one is a 15-minute qualifying followed by two 10-minute heats, a 12-minute semi-final, and then a 15-minute grand final for the top 6 finishers in both semi-finals. So we're going to jump straight into the footage here and see how we get on today. Now before we do, if you do enjoy this video, can you please leave a like on it down below, as I really do appreciate it. And if you're new to the channel, if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button, as it really does help me out. Now jumping into qualifying here, what you are seeing is in fact my fastest lap during qualifying. You can see so far our best lap is a 50.152, which is about 4 attempts off my personal best at the track during practice. And we're just going to see what we can do as we're throwing the car in throughout each of the corners. Going to leave you guys on board for the last couple of laps just so you can see sort of the layout of the track, and we're just going to see how we get on. Now, getting excuses out of the way straight away, I was given kart 22 in qualifying and I did not see it again for the rest of the day, so I was a bit upset about this, but this is why I went and did 4 weeks worth of practice, just to make sure that even if I had a kart that wasn't quite up to the most perfect machinery on the track, then I'd still be able to put in a pretty decent lap time. So we come around on the last corner here and across the line with a 50.122 second lap time, which did in fact put me in second place, and it did put me 4 tenths off of first place and 3 tenths ahead of the guys behind me. So we're in a little bit of no man's land here, and I was a little bit upset with this just because I came off thinking that I was absolutely flying in qualifying. I was at the front of the pack and I just pulled away from everyone. I thought that I was driving pretty well. I felt really comfortable in the car. It felt quite nice. It wasn't slipping around too much. But unfortunately, we just didn't quite have the pace to take pole position from Thomas Wiltshire, who did in fact put in a 49.7 second lap time in qualifying. So a massive congratulations to him, because he was absolutely flying all day, as you are going to see. Now, coming up the ramp once again, we're going to come into the last corner here, and we're going to see what sort of times we're able to put coming across on the last lap. And we come across only 5 thousandths slower, so we are very consistent. But as you can see, myself and Thomas Wiltshire in P1 and 2. We then had Ryan Reed in 3rd, Kai Pugh in 4th, Kyle Gaffney in 5th, and then we had some other drivers rounding out sort of the rest of the grid. Obviously there's 10 per heat in this one. So with this in mind, I'm going to jump straight into the first heat. Obviously where we qualified is where we're going to start, and there was a big gap in between each session because we were alternating between middleweights and heavyweights, which made it a little bit more nerve-wracking, as it was about an hour wait before each session. So personally I would have just liked to have jumped in and given it a go, much like you do in locals, but obviously with the alternating between middleweights and heavyweights, it did in fact make the day a little bit shorter rather than dragging out till the late hours of the evening. So just immediately I want to give a massive shout out to all the guys that were running the track on the day. You did an amazing job, and honestly I don't think the day could have gone much smoother than it did. But jumping into the racing, we officially start coming across the start finish line, and we are behind Tom Wiltshire. Now I was told by him that 32 was the car he had in qualifying, so I knew that this car was very good, and I could see immediately off the start that he was struggling with his car a little bit. So I knew that if I was able to sort of put the pressure on him, who knows what would have happened. However, in the back of my mind as I was driving around, I wanted to think back to the last 2 years of BIKC regionals, where I've been qualifying down in 6th and 7th, and being up in 2nd place is really an ideal place from where you can start your heats, as it just means that you're going to lead yourself on to 3rd or 4th come the end of the day if you are sort of just staying in the same position all day and don't make any overtakes. And just from the first couple of laps, you can see the gap that myself and Tom are pulling, and the gap Tom's pulled on me. So I knew pretty quickly that we were going to be able to just sort of push away. There wasn't any real need to go for any aggressive moves, as we could just work together to sort of storm away from the rest of the pack, and then later on in the heat have a little bit of fun if we were feeling racy enough. So you can see once again Tom's getting more and more frustrated once again, much like he did at Cardiff, as I could tell that his car wasn't quite up to speed with the car I was in. So I was all over the back of him here, sort of backing off a little bit just to give him a little bit more room, just to try and make sure that we could pull away sort of calmly and together. And once more again, we're coming into the bottom bottom section of the track, which is extremely slippy, and it's really important to get your lines right. You can see there I've just taken a little bit too much of a deep line into the corner there, and it's caused me to lose a bit of time, but we're able to gain it back coming into the bottom hairpin before coming up the ramp and then into the last corner. Once again, we come across the line with a 51.111, so we're not exactly going very quick. You can see Tom is really struggling with that hairpin there, and this is where he then starts to go into aggro mode. So I'm going to use this effect because clearly it's my favourite effect so far to be using if you watched my last video, but Tom sort of beats the wheel there and it causes an eruption across the whole track. But we do skip forward in this one, as there was no need for him to get frustrated. We were just sort of pushing away in first and second, much like he did at Cardiff. He was getting really frustrated for honestly no reason. We weren't really going to look for any dive bombs here. We were just trying to take it as steady as possible. Not too much action throughout the race, as we were just trundling around in first and second. We do get a little bit racy here towards the end, as we were all over the back of him. And I was thinking here, could we maybe sneak a P1? But even as he's braking coming down the ramp, you can see he's still getting a better exit out of the corner. So I think our karts were pretty equal here. I think that obviously Tom's kart was a little bit slower, and this allowed me to keep up with him pretty easily, but we were still on equal pace, obviously being held up by him from him defending. So once again, we take a wider line into the double apex at the bottom of the track, which is very slippy and probably one of the most difficult corners on the track, as I mentioned. But by taking a tighter line, it does give you a lot more grip compared to going out wide and taking a more conventional line. But with this in mind, we come across the line to finish our first heat. You can see we remained in first and second, Ryan stayed in third, and essentially everyone pretty much stayed in the same positions that they finished in, other than Kyle Gaffney, who was able to get past Kai Pugh to move himself up into fourth position. And then we also have Kevin at the back, who really surprisingly, as you will see at the end of this one, a couple of people actually then went home on this second heat, which I was a little bit surprised about. You've made all the effort to come down to the track, and obviously you've paid your money and your petrol money, and I was a bit surprised to see that people were leaving early. Obviously anything can happen in these races. Obviously I'm sort of a prime example of that, coming from getting penalties in other regional finals and still being able to make my way through the pack. So it's a bit disappointed to see people leave, but I do understand it if they just felt that it wasn't really their day. But moving on into the second heat, once again, I had kart 39 here, and I was told by one of the other drivers in the opposing heats, or the opposite heats here, that kart 39 was not very good. I wanted to try and put that out of my mind and just put the pressure on Tom immediately whilst he was still defending, as I knew that if he could stay defending for the whole race, I'd be able to keep up with him. But I knew if he had a kart that was quite a lot better than mine, then if he started taking conventional lines, he was going to be able to break away into the distance. And you can see here at the beginning, we tried to make a few little sneaky moves, but unfortunately Tom covered it off quite well, and we are also beginning to already break away from the pack behind. And despite taking some really nice, clean, tight lines, in my opinion, we still weren't really gaining any time on Tom, who's up ahead. You can see coming out of the corner, the kart's just not really having as much grip as I'd like there, and it's just causing us to lose those couple of kart lengths, which really do mean everything at this level in the competition. So once again, coming into the last corner here, coming across the line, you can see we come across the line with a 51.654, which really wasn't quick enough to be competitive on the day. I was about to say evening because I come to so many team sport events in the evening, but on the day it's just not really a competitive time. So hopefully we're able to improve on that come the end of this session. But you can see once again we're really sort of losing the back end on this kart quite a bit, especially coming into this flat out section of the track, really trying to get ourselves as tight as possible, because that corner's a really fun one, but if you do get it slightly wrong, you're going to lose all your momentum coming into the hairpin before the down ramp, and you're just going to lose a lot of time. Again, taking some pretty clean lines, but you can see here Tom is just racing away more and more on the exit of every corner, and I was getting a little bit frustrated because I didn't quite understand why. I didn't know if it was just the way I was driving, or if I was losing too much speed in the corners. But you can see once again he's just pulling more and more of a gap through every corner, and it was just sort of playing on my mind a little bit here about what was said about the kart. So I wasn't too annoyed at this point, as I was still in second place, but I would have liked to have challenged Tom a little bit more in this second heat. But once again, you can see coming into this top section, we're just losing so much time, especially over the wooden section of the track where it is increasingly grippy, and he's just sort of racing away pretty easily without having to break much of a sweat. So again, taking some nice tight lines where we sort of skip forward, because genuinely you could see by the end of the race, he's now managed to pull 3 seconds on us coming around the last couple of corners on this last lap. So over the course of nine laps, I know for a fact I'm not 3 seconds slower than Tom. So I was really disappointed with this one, as there was literally nothing I could do. I was just a bit of a passenger at this point, and I'd still pulled away from the people behind in 3rd, 4th. So I knew that second place was pretty much sewn up. The guys behind were a little bit closer on this one, so I knew that the kart was really a struggle to use. But we do come across the line in second still, which I was really happy with. Our fastest lap being a 50.366, which is slower than our time in the first heat and in our practice qualifying session. But you can see here with the results on the screen that 10th and 11th have actually gone home, both drivers from Leicester, which was a bit disappointing to see. But we were instead going to jump into the semi-final now. So because we had finished in second place for both of our heats, we had now come out in second place. Now when the race started and we were pulling out the pits, I was in fact put into 5th place. Now unfortunately I didn't quite capture this on camera, but I was getting very, very, very angry, frustrated. I was sort of shouting at the marshals, wondering why I was in 5th place, as I had finished in second for both heats, and I'd also put in some pretty respectable times compared to the other group as well. And luckily for myself, after screaming and crying a little bit, we were then put back up into second, as one of the marshals on the day had put us down. Instead of finishing in second, they put us down as having 2 points, so obviously we got pushed back because of that. But luckily, after sort of a little bit of screaming and moaning, it was rectified and we were put back into second place behind Dan Moore, who had absolutely slammed his heat all morning. Now the one thing I did notice pretty quickly is that he had the car I had in the second heat, which I knew was slow on sort of around the track, and I had the car that Tom had, so I knew for a fact that I would be able to really go for first place in this one if I was able to make a move stick, as I knew that the car up ahead was an absolute handful to use. And you can see Dan here is really struggling with it, missing some of the apexes by quite a margin, and it is holding us up a little bit here. But in the back of my mind, I knew that if I wanted to try and get past, we're going to have to do it early before he starts really locking up the shop. He goes really wide into that bottom apex, and we just go for a huge lunge down the inside, beating him to the apex there, and that moved us up into first place, which I was really happy about, as this now meant that we were going to start in first or second for the grand final. So no matter what, we were going to finish in one of those top 2 positions, or we're going to start in one of those 2 positions for the grand final. But now it was just going to be a case of putting in the best lap time we could, because we were on the second sort of semi-final. So I knew that the time to beat was a 50.2 if I wanted to qualify myself on pole and jump Tom Wiltshire, who won in the first semi-final. So we're going to stay on board here for the next couple of laps just to see how much of a gap we were able to create in such a short amount of time, with every other driver behind having a little bit of a squabble with one another, and obviously being stuck behind Dan, who is in that kart that is a little bit slower, and he really was struggling with it, as you will see by the end of this session. Now coming into the bottom hairpin once again, looking over our shoulder, you can see the gap is getting bigger and bigger throughout each section of the track. Really, it wasn't even each lap, and we come across the line with a 51.105. We skip forward here, you can see so far we're getting a 50.6, which then goes down to a 50.5, and you can see that over a 12-minute race we only get 10 laps in. Now I was getting quicker and quicker every single lap, and I felt that I would have been able to sort of get up really close to Tom's time, who obviously got a 50.2. You can see everyone on the right hand side there, that was how much of a gap we were able to pull to everyone else. But Tom obviously got a 50.2. I felt like I was getting quicker and quicker every lap, and again coming into this top section or the middle section of the track, really taking some nice tight lines here, ensuring that the back end of the car wasn't sliding out too much, correcting mid corner, and once again you can see on the left that is second and third, so we are pulling more and more away from everyone else behind us. And obviously I wasn't letting off at this point, just for the sole fact that I knew if I was able to put in a good lap time, then this would lead to us starting on pole in the grand final, which would set us up really nicely for a really good result. Now you can see we come across the line here with a 50.491, and you can see that there is also no timer in the top left hand corner of the screen, and you're about to see why this happens. As I mentioned, I was feeling quicker and quicker throughout each of the laps that was going on, and I felt like I was putting in a better and better time, obviously with about 3 to 4 laps left, I think that I would have managed to get pretty close to that 50.2 that I needed. But unfortunately, as we come into the bottom section of the track here, sweep round the sort of hairpins on the bottom, you can see we're pulling even more of a gap, so I was really happy with this at the time. I felt like I was in a really good mental space, that we were doing really well, the whole win of the event could be on the cards. But as we come back up the ramp, you can see that a dreaded red light comes on. This causes us to stop, and unfortunately this was the end of the race. So we just sort of trundled round after waiting for 5 minutes, and this is where we ended up. And you can see that this is because Daniel Moore, who started in first place, did drop all the way back down to 9th because he had to swap his kart. He didn't want to swap his kart, but unfortunately this pushed him right to the back of the pack, and this then drops him out of the semi-final, from the semi-final, and drops him out of the final, which was really upsetting to see, especially as he'd been on a flyer all day. And even though we managed to make our overtake on him, he just wasn't able to go any further. But jumping into the final then, you can see we've been absolutely swamped off the start. Thomas had an absolute rocket start. I just couldn't quite see where the green light was. There was a couple of pillars in the way of where the light was, and if I'm honest, I think I was just caught napping here. He had an absolutely electric start and jetted off into the distance. We're in behind him here, and I was hoping to try and gain that time back as best I could. You can see we've lost 2 to 3 kart lengths already, so he's already at a massive advantage to sort of get off into the distance. You can see I'm already beginning to blame my kart as we do lose the rear end through a lot of these corners. And if I'm honest, as I was driving around, I thought that the kart just wasn't very good. I knew that 75 from practice had been absolutely electric. Some electric times had been put in, pardon the pun, but I just wasn't really enjoying using it, and I don't know why, if I was just getting a little bit too stressed. But obviously I was also pulling the gap to the guys behind, so there was clearly nothing wrong with it, and I was in fact equal with Tom for the whole race, which you will see as the remaining laps sort of round themselves out. But at the time I was just sat in the car thinking, what the hell am I doing wrong? I don't really understand why I'm losing so much time. I wasn't losing any time, it was just a bit of a placebo of the Constantina effect. As you're coming into the corners, you can see we're sort of maintaining the same gap that has been sort of produced from the beginning of the race, and we come around once again into the last corner and we come across the line with a 51.088, which, if we think back to some of the other races we've done, this is a whole half a second quicker already going into the first lap. So clearly we're on for some pretty good lap times, but unfortunately in my brain it just didn't seem that way. And you can see coming into the latter stages of the race, because honestly it was just a little bit of a hot lap session, if I'm honest. We've come across the line on our last lap with a 49.939, and now we are going to hop on board for the last couple of laps. You can actually see there is no one else on the top floor other than myself and Tom, who had now raced off into the distance. I didn't sort of go into cruise control mode at this point. I was still pushing the car as much as I could, but I just couldn't quite extract the time out of it that I wanted, or be as consistent as I needed to be in order to catch back up to him. He was really on a flyer on this day, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, and honestly hats off to him because he did an amazing job. You can see on the right hand side there, that is Mike Allen, who is in fact in third place, and we're pretty much a whole floor ahead of him. We're only a second and a half behind Tom here as well, so we were really on for some decent pace. We come across the line on that last lap with a 49.86 or 876, which was in fact our fastest lap of the day. Obviously that was still a whole temp slower than Tom was able to put in qualifying, and which one thing I did find very weird is that was actually the fastest lap of the final. So I was able to get the fastest lap in this race, which still wasn't even as quick as Tom was able to put in during qualifying. So I have no idea how he managed to do that in such a short space of time, so hats off to him. And now we're coming around the last couple of laps here once again, just trying to give you guys a little bit of a few tips and tricks for this track. Obviously I would highly recommend you guys coming down here. I believe that the track is looking to open up the 3 floors, not only on Thursdays anymore, but also on Monday social sessions as well. So I would highly recommend getting down to the track. It's a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed coming down here to practice, and also this whole regional event was a lot of fun as well. But you can see here we're trying to really throw the kart in on the wooden section. You can see we're really getting aggressive on the wheel just to make sure that the kart turns in nice and sort of quickly. So we really want the kart to be as pointy as possible, especially through this top section here, as you want to carry as much speed as you can coming into the double apex here, coming down the ramp, getting as tight as possible to minimise the track distance, moving all the way back over to the right once again, trying to be a little bit more careful coming down that ramp just to ensure you don't lose too much momentum, and again throwing the car in and hitting the brakes very slightly but very quickly and very sharply just to ensure the kart rotates. Now when the track grips up through that double apex there, you can actually take it by just lifting, which does save you a couple of attempts as well. And once more we get the kart rotated nicely for that second to last corner and the last corner once again. But we do come across the line in this one in second place, and you can see how much it means to me. I was so happy with this. After 3 years of giving this competition a go, we finally managed to get ourselves up into second place and qualify for the BIKC national final up at Warrington. Honestly, I can't thank all of you guys enough. We've got the results for the final up on the screen now. Obviously only the top 3 managed to get through, so massive shout out to everyone that made it to the grand final, and especially a massive shout out to Tom Wiltshire and Mike Allen, who managed to qualify and get through with myself. Honestly, met a load of lovely people here on the day and throughout practice. Have had an absolute blast come down to the track, giving it a go, and also just having a bit of fun with people, having a great load of racing. And I also want to give a massive shout out to all of the track staff. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier in the day, it just was an absolutely amazing experience. Everyone at the track made sure that the racing was run smoothly, and we got home nice and early compared to what I thought we were going to. But this does in fact bring us to the end of the video, guys, so I hope you have all enjoyed this one. If you have, can you please leave a like on the video down below, as I really do appreciate it. And if you're new to the channel, if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button, as it really does help me out. I'd like to thank everyone for the support that you've given me over the last couple of years on the channel, because you can really see how much this moment meant to me. And just for this, I'm going to leave a little bit of the footage that we managed to capture coming off of the track, as honestly I felt it was really wholesome and I really enjoyed it. So in the meantime, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.
I've got way too much weight today.
Dancing till